Games come from somewhere. My game idea came from playing Dungeons and Dragons for like 10 years. It came from a set of Wendy's toys, like kids meal toys that we got, and Marvel's Battle World game, which we bought like at a little convenience store at the beach or something with my son, just because it was small and it was there and it had Iron Man on it. But in order to dig deeper on those three things, we're going to have to go somewhere different because this space will not do. We need to go to the game room. So, first things first, I am a sucker for Dungeons and Dragons. I jumped on the bandwagon about 10 years ago, and I started running the Lost Mines of Phandelver with my buddies. I called a handful of friends and I said, hey, what do you know about D&D? Some of them said, no, I don't know anything about it. And I said, cool, I'll see you on Monday. And I started running the game. I'd never played it before. I always wanted to, but I fell in love with it immediately when I started running the game. And it's full of so many fun monsters that I wish I would have the chance to play. And not only in this small adventure, but in the rest of the player's handbooks and monster manuals and the Dungeon Master's Guide. I've been playing and running it now for about 10 years, and it's one of my favorite things to do in the world. I also have two small children. They're too young to play Dungeons and Dragons, but we were on a beach trip and we stopped by Wendy's. This was again maybe 7 or 6 years ago, and they were handing these out with their kids' meals. And I had no idea what they were, and the kids had no idea what they were. But when we got to our location, we opened them up, and I found out that all they are these little like pop-up settings. This is called the Bustling City. And you set them up like so, and they just kind of stand wherever you want. And they come with a big bunch of characters, whether they're playable characters like this knight or paladin, or non-player characters or NPCs like this town crier, this fishmonger, a gargoyle. You get the idea. And they came with these little stands that you can use to stand them up. And all you gotta do is, if you're gonna play as the knight going into the Bustling City, you can add your standee and play the game, right? And let's say that we're going to talk to the mayor. And you can add that. Right. And now you have a full setting to tell a story in, or just play pretend. And it didn't just come with the city, but they have a huge variety of like environments and spaces. That's the Bustling City. This is the incredible cavern. And I'll open this guy up. And you can see they all have their own kind of flavor and vibe to them. And they're just spectacularly creative and fun. So when my nibblings asked if they could play D&D, I kind of pulled this guy out and I showed them some of the characters that were in the different spaces. One of them chose to be this kind of ranger character, another was this kind of druidy character. And we told what I think to this date is my favorite Dungeons and Dragons stories, where they explored this cathedral, they bought some fish from the fishmonger, they found, a sad gargoyle who lost his best buddy, the cat, because the door got stuck. The door was stuck because of some mushrooms that were getting stuff stuck in magical, and they followed the mushrooms down to a trapdoor that led them to the cavern, and we had an incredible adventure in the cavern. And I just realized how much fun it is to just be creative and explore fantasy spaces, especially with children. Their imagination was going wild every time they'd ask a question that I never would have expected, that my friends at the table would never have asked. And it was just so encouraging for kids to be able to be, presented these realms and spaces and opportunities to interact with characters and spaces and places. And it just sparked something in me that I've been chasing ever since. And this was a long time ago. Now, these I had 2 of because I have 2 children. And when I got back, I immediately went online and I found that there was an enormous collection of them. Just look at this, a royal court with a knight. There's a castle here. There's, winter woods or an undersea kingdom. There's magical rainforests or misty rivers if you want to run more like a Viking-y Norse one. So it's got like this Viking ship that you can jump on. And this one has its own creatures and characters that are all there. So they have this scary sea creature and tentacles that you can send out. They also have, I think, a fire giant that could be like the big bad of this adventure. Anyways, each of these is a couple of sessions or a session with a bunch of encounters that you could have. It's just delightful. And I got them all on the internet and now I have them and I've yet to really actually play with them. All right, let's clean this up. So the next major bit of inspiration, right, beyond just the Dungeons and Dragons and this kind of Wendy's fantasy environments and spaces, was actually from a different trip. We were in a little coastal town and we went to a convenience store and we bought this little hexagon, but I don't have it, it's been that long. It's this little hex ball that came with a couple of characters and character cards. And this is Marvel's Battle World. And if you've never played it, it's a really, really simple game. These little standees are really cool. They designed it with Funko and they have these awesome little collecting stands. Like obviously this is a collectible kind of game here. I think the primary thing is collecting the minifigures, but the game itself had some fun stuff. So my son wanted it because he's a big Marvel fan, and we tried to play it and I found out, oh, there's actually a pretty cool little game here. And it's a D12 based game. It's a very simple premise, right? You have a bunch of these Battle World hexes, and it's a single player or multiplayer game. If you're a single player, there's certain parameters, but you lay these hexes out. You draw, I think, 3 to begin with. I'm just gonna flip them. And there's a variety of things, right? You have big monsters, and they're all Marvel themed. You have these things called Thanos stones, which you can use to collect more characters. A few of these come in these orange kind of crystal-y foam things that you got to break them out of. And they're all, again, Marvel based. These are like Ultron robots and stuff. I don't know what a World Breaker is, but there's a bunch of different monsters and critters and stuff that you can fight. It's all fighting based. And what you do is you take your character. This is my Spider-Man character. Each of the characters has a special ability. This guy has night vision, which means that negative zone Spider-Man may reroll attacks once at moon battles. And these enemies have either sun or moon on them, and we'll get to that in a second. But if you're in a moon one, you can reroll an attack once. So let's say that I, as the player that's playing Spider-Man, decide that I want to go fight, the flying drones, right? So all you got to do is select the flying drones, and you have to roll whatever the target number here is. This is 8 or higher on whatever this yellow explosion thing or the little blue tornado is. So you look at your abilities and you say, okay, blue tornado I have +2, yellow exploding thing I have +0, so I'm going to choose to attack with the blue one, and you're looking to roll higher than an 8. I rolled a 2, which means that I'd miss, and on a miss, you increase the danger and you add these little chits up here, and so on. So if you roll higher than the 8, you advance on this kind of line. At the end of a full cycle of turns, you're going to flip this, right? You're going to flip the coin. And if it lands on a moon, then anybody with a moon gets a chit added. The sunstone advance danger, and then we start all over again. It's my turn again. I'm going to go attack. Boom, and I roll 5 + 2, that's 7. That's a miss. So the objective is to roll higher than the target number, succeed enough times to, successfully defeat this card. And when you do, you flip it over and that's a success. If it's a failure and you lost, then that's a failure. And after a certain amount of these failed encounters, you lose the game, or a certain amount of successful encounter cards, then you win the game. And that's all it is. These cards really don't change much. What changes is what you might be attacking with, the target number, the amount of, these, I don't know what they're called, the advancements. It's like hit points. and these kind of danger tokens that you might earn. And that's all the variables that you get. And the pressure kind of mounts as there are more cards out every turn. You're flipping more cards. If you're more players, you can be in different hexes and you can affect each other's rolls. But it's a super basic game. You could roll it out, flip it. We played in like 15 or 20 minutes with my kids, and once it's over there, we've lost both times. We were just frustrated, so we tried to play again, and we lost again, and then they were mad and didn't want to play ever again. So we put it away for a long time. But I was kind of hooked on this idea, especially the form factor of these hexagons. I thought was really fun. Never once did whatever was on here matter to me. It was just more the idea of advancement in the bad guy's success or the good guy's successes, this idea of a target number that you're trying to hit. And the flavor of Marvel is fine. I was a big comic book nerd growing up, so it worked on me. I'm not a big Funko Pop collector guy, so those didn't really work on me, but here we are. They're fun little minis. Now, I took all this and ate it up in my brain. And I was like, okay, we have minis, right? I have minis. And I love D&D. And D&D has a ton of monsters in it. And I thought maybe there's a way that I can take this and combine it. And I just ripped D&D straight off the page, and I pulled a bunch of creatures from specifically this adventure in the Lost Mines. So we have goblins and giant spiders and an evil mage and a gelatinous cube. And I had a bunch of these encounters that I was trying to come up with. And after I came up with monster encounters, I'm like, well, we could do more. How do I add this kind of get more characters to play the game? So I'm like, okay, maybe there's a prison cell here. And I was flirting with the idea of having like Critical Role themed playable characters. But I used all the accoutrement from D&D proper, right? You had armor class, you had the stats from D&D. These are the stats that these characters would be good at. For example, this rogue, Vax'ildan, is good at dexterity and good at charisma. He had some abilities that I gave him per level that were similar to what's in D&D's character development. I also created some treasure chests, and in the treasure chests, I figured you could maybe draw and earn different little magic items and like potions, consumables, or keys, and a staff from the evil mage. All these little treasures that you could earn from the chests. So my idea was to combine all those things and put the hexes where, and the positioning of them actually kind of mattered. So I was like, oh, that'd be cool. We'll just kind of lay out an adventure here, and I'm going to lay out all these hexagons randomly, right? And put them out here. And the other part of what I really wanted to figure out with this version of the game was a way that I could use all these minis that I already have, because so many times, we collect miniatures as dungeon masters and game masters and directors, and we don't always get to use all of them. But I thought maybe this is the way that we can flirt with it. So let's pretend we're going to play as Vax'ildan, the rogue. And now what I would do is I'd lay out my dungeon here, right? Like a little dungeon crawly game. And I think this is still stuck in with what we're developing fully. But you lay your hexes down and you choose where you begin. Do you want to start over here in the dungeon or start over here in the dungeon? So let's say we're going to start right over here. And now, if this is our initial point, I was deciding, okay, are we going to go here or are we going to go here? You have to go into an adjacent hex. We're going to go ahead and say that this is our rogue Vax'ildan. We're going to use this mini. Cool little rogue dude. So this is us. This is Vax, and we're ready to go on an adventure. So I'm going to choose to proceed to this hexagon. So everything is face down. You wouldn't know what's underneath it. And I flip this over, and here it is. Here's our little goblin. And remember how I said we have minis that we wanted to use? Take your mini if you want. Plop them right here. So now we got a mini that we're fighting. And these monsters had basic stats like Dungeons and Dragons do, right? He had a dexterity of +4. Everything is a flat roll. He has a 15 AC or armor class, so you're trying to roll higher than a 15. He had 3 hit points that you were trying to hit him, or 3 hit points that you were trying to knock him out. And it was meant to function like Dungeons and Dragons. This was going to be a D20 based game. The idea was to introduce folks to some of the main archetypes in Dungeons and Dragons, and also specifically to the mechanics of Dungeons and Dragons. So we're going to take one of our cool Dispel dice. It was a D20 based game. And at level 1, which is where I was, I would roll to try to hit the goblin. I rolled a D20. Ooh, 16 is higher than a 15. Success. So I would advance. Now it's the goblin's turn, and then I'd roll a D20. And it rolled a 16. That's higher than mine, so that was a hit. And I'm like, damn, how do I track hit points? So I was like, all right, let's maybe use a D6 to track our hit die. We have 6 hit points. So he hit me once and I would decrement the die down to 5. Now it's my turn. I roll a d20. And I rolled a 1. That's a miss. Now it's their turn. And they rolled a 17. That's a hit. So I go down to 4. This was as far as I got. You can tell already this is kind of a boring game. Eventually, I succeed in defeating the goblin. That's fine. And then I would choose where to advance to next. Let's say that I go over here. Oh, look, there's a treasure. I'm like, all right, that was really boring. How can I make this a little bit more fun? So for a treasure encounter, I decided to, okay, they don't have hit points, right? Because it's a treasure chest. So I gave these 3 opportunities to succeed. So I'd roll again my d20s at my dex modifier. Again, you're using the similar rules as D&D. So you could try to pick the lock. If you successfully picked it, you could pick one of these healing potions and you'd roll a d4 and it would decide what you would get. Or you could do this. I'm like, what if you're not a dex-based character? That would really suck to encounter a chest and you'd be almost impossible for you to roll higher than a 17. So I gave this option. I'm like, let's add some variety here. And this one says, I smash it open. If you roll a successful attack on the chest, there's a chance the content got smashed along with it. Roll a d20. On a 1 to 10, the content is lost. So you try to roll with your strength, for example, to try to smash it open. And you roll your d20. And if you succeed, you get a potion. If you fail, you smashed everything on the inside. So the rest of the dungeon you would navigate, right? Kind of going through here, finding the right minis to fight, flipping through, trying to make it to the end of the dungeon. Here's a ghoul. And some of these too, I decided, you know what? Maybe they should have fun abilities. So ghouls have poisonous claws, and on a successful hit, the player would make a constitution saving throw or be paralyzed, which just means that you would miss a turn. So it would attack twice consecutively. And that's kind of what this game was. And I still think this could be fun if you add a little bit more variety to it and you started tweaking it and manipulating it. I sat with a few friends and that I played D&D with, and we decided to play test this. We played it a handful of times, and every time I'm like, it's kind of really boring. All you're doing is rolling a d20, rolling a d20, rolling a d20 constantly, and there's no variety necessarily to what you're doing. Your decisions are always, it's fine which hex you kind of move to, but you're always fighting the thing that's there or smashing it open. When I got to this point, I'm like, all right, this is really complicated. If you don't know the base and core of Dungeons and Dragons in general, you're not going to be able to play this game very easily. So I put it aside. I kind of forgot about it for a while. So in this version of the game, what I'm currently developing is 2 different environments, and I'm sticking with some of the stuff that really inspired me here with the Wendy's toys, specifically the bustling city and a forest environment, because I think both of those spaces allow you to develop a huge number of encounters, from creatures and monsters to role-playing encounters that leads you to a big boss at the end, so that your levels in your environments all are progressive and tell a cohesive story of these spaces and the denizens. So as a player, you can use all these abilities, you can gain magic items, and have a different way that I want to build that, but that's for the next video. I wanted to show you where the inspiration for this game came from. So that's it. Those are the 3 things that really inspired me to sit down and actually design something of my own. Playing D&D with my friends, playing that create your own adventure with my kids and nibblings, and seeing their imagination just explode. And then the simplicity of those hexagons and a few dice rolls to resolve encounters and progress as kind of the threat advances. Those really inspired me to sit down and kind of smash those things that I love together and create something new. Anyways, you guys know how the internet works. The internet likes and subscriptions and comments. So let me know what games inspired you. If you're developing a game, what are you taking and reformatting and recreating into something that you're gonna love and that will hopefully be new and innovative and exciting for you. But until then, see you, bye.